Hi, I'm Russell Sturgis. I'm the founder and principal of EAP Mentor, and I do a series of blogs on awareness and mindfulness, and welcome to my latest blog. This week I'm wanting to talk about mindfulness in business, and I hope you've taken the opportunity to read the blog where I have explored what the benefits and proposed several ideas in terms of benefits that people would experience in business if they were to adopt mindfulness as part of their business practice. Interesting enough, just recently I had the opportunity to present to a group of business people here on the Sunshine Coast, and I was talking and asking them about what they understood around mindfulness, and what was interesting was that they knew very little, and more to the point that they understood little about how mindfulness had the capacity to make a difference in their success in business and in terms of their own personal well-being and the well-being of their staff. Mindfulness really does need to be defined, and of course for most of us we think of mindfulness in terms of meditation, but from the Enhances Awareness program perspective, from EAP's perspective, mindfulness is remembering in any moment that there's a self-loving alternative, that there's a self-honouring alternative to what it is that you're doing habitually. And so just in that alone we begin to become more clear about what mindfulness isn't. And of course in that context mindfulness is not being habitual. So not mindfulness is this capacity to do what we do day in and day out with programmed behaviours. And of course we've alluded to this in previous blogs, and I think I even talk about it in this one, is this whole idea that 95% of our time, typically for most people, is spent functioning habitually, which means we're doing what we've always done, and oftentimes in a lot of detail with how we've always done it. That only leaves 5% of our awareness being attuned to our dreams and aspirations and things that we want to do that aren't confined by programming and habit. So when you think about that, it's kind of scary to think we spend so much time doing things habitually. And of course in business, we do much the same thing. So in business what we have is this program of habitual behaviour where day in and day out we keep on doing the same things. Monday morning we turn up to work and we've got our routine and our schedule, and we go through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 5 o'clock comes around Friday and we're off for the weekend, and then we have our habitual life in terms of the things that we do in our family and our home. And I mean, you think about driving to and from work. How often do you really maintain thought and awareness of what it is that you're doing in your driving when you're going to and from work? Do you remember what it is? Unless something really sort of scary or different happens, we don't have any recollection of those things. Even in how we relate to our children, how we relate to our partners, even in our physical intimacy and how we express ourselves in physical intimacy. So much of this becomes habitual. And so what we have are these safe routines, these safe things that we do day in and day out that means that we're able to have our needs met, and we're able to minimise the capacity for us not to survive. So for things to happen that we can't control, or for things that are going to cause pain or suffering in some form. And so we have these lives of being able to establish routine, and it's so well established that we don't even have to engage thought about how we do it. So mindfulness in business is this whole idea that we begin to start to explore and be aware of a more beneficial, a more self-nurturing, a self-loving reality in terms of how we relate to our business and what we do in our business. So that in order for us to do that though, we have to have a sense that there is worth enough in us to have a more self-honouring or self-loving expression. In fact, it's really impossible to be mindful if you don't have a sense of self-worth. In fact, the only way that you can live habitually is not having self-worth. It's part of what enables us to allow the habitual behaviours to function, is knowing that we're going to stay safe in our lack of self-worth if we keep on doing what we've always done. coming into this place of being mindful and this whole idea that we're starting to explore a more serving and loving alternative reality means that we have a sense that we deserve it, that we're entitled to it, and that comes from a sense of developing our self-worth. Now, what's intrinsic to all of this is this whole sense of, well, you know, what's stopping me from having my sense of self-worth now? And why don't I have self-loving alternative realities? Why don't I have a greater sense of inner peace and stillness? Why don't I have this capacity to maintain compassion and empathy and kindness as part of how I turn up in the world and function day to day and in my relationships? So understanding where that comes from is understanding that, once again, we have a habitual sense of who we are. We've been programmed to believe that who we are is what we were taught we were, and for most of us that was established by the time we were 5 or 7 years old. What's really interesting is that most of us are responding to our 5 or 7 year old in terms of our perceived sense of self-worth. So mine was not being noticed. In order to have some value, I need to be noticed. Others are about being important. Others are about not being judged or not being seen as not being good enough. There are so many different versions. All of them might have different nuances, but they all boil down to this idea of lack of self-worth. And so our habitual lives are a direct response to our sense of not having self-worth, which comes from programming that happened at a very early age. So one of the things that has to be done in terms of being able to create this sense of self-worth and therefore the capacity to be mindful and then to reap the rewards of that within our business environment, we need somebody to help us with that. And of course at EAP Mentor, that's exactly what we do. We help people establish a greater sense of their value and self-worth, and out of that be able to establish sustainable mindfulness, which means that they can turn up out of their sense of self-worth, being able to find the worth in other people, and out of that then be more compassionate and more honouring of others as well as themselves and of the planet as well. They have a greater capacity to live their life with a greater sense of stillness and inner peace, which brings an amazing sense of balance to the environment in which people work and into the lives of other people with whom they work, their customers and their colleagues. You have this sense of fulfilment in the work that you do and a sense of purpose and engagement in turning up to your work. So you get out of the bed in the morning and you want to go to work because you know that it's making a difference and that it's honouring to you, but it's honouring to other people. The key is that you have this sense of self-worth first as a result of having resolved this 7-year-old narrative from when you were 7. And you don't go looking for it in terms of what other people give you. So you don't need it from your boss, and you don't need it from your customers, and you don't need it from your colleagues or your partner. You turn up with a sense of self-worth, which allows you then to be much more conscious of making loving decisions, making choices that are going to be beneficial to you as opposed to things that are going to be harmful. And of course, I talk about lifestyle diseases and the fact that depression, anxiety, and then all of the other ones, diabetes and all the other lifestyle diseases that we're experiencing as an epidemic in society today is really a direct result of the fact that we're living habitual lives that come out of our sense of poor self-worth. Hey, over the next couple of blogs, I'm going to be talking more about mindfulness in business, and we're going to be talking about the benefits of mindfulness in business and how to achieve it. I just wanted to introduce you to the notion of it and that it's possible. The blog certainly gives you some lovely detail, and please, if you have any questions or any comments, go to where the blog is and there's a comment section there, and please add a comment. We'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to sharing more with you about being mindful in business in the next blog. Speak to you then. Bye.